I spent 5 years building $1 billion software. My boss stole it and is presenting it today, but the final slide is a Trojan horse I coded to destroy his career. The office was a ghost town, the way I liked it best. The only sound was the soft hum of the servers and the steady click-clack of my keyboard, a rhythm that had become the soundtrack to my life for the past 5 years. Outside, the city was a glittering tapestry of lights, but in here, my world was confined to the 3 monitors in front of me, glowing with lines of code that were more a part of me than my own DNA. This project, Helios, it wasn't just a job. It was a promise I'd made to myself a long time ago. I still remembered the day my dad sat at our kitchen table, his head in his hands, his face gray with exhaustion. A single misplaced shipment, a cascade of logistical failures, and our family's small shipping business was on the brink of collapse. I was in college studying computer science, and I felt so helpless, watching the system fail a good, hard-working man. So I started building a better one. Helios wasn't just a logistics AI, it was the answer. A system that didn't just track shipments but could predict problems before they even happened, rerouting and optimizing in real time. It was my life's work. "You're going to burn out, Alara." I jumped, pulling my headphones off. Marcus stood there, leaning against my cubicle wall with that easy, charismatic smile of his. He held out a coffee. Double espresso, light on the foam. Your usual, he was more than just my boss. He was my mentor, the one who saw the potential in my college project and gave me a sandbox to build my dream in. "You're the best mind in this company," he'd told me during my interview. "And I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." "Almost there," I said, a tired but excited smile on my face. "Actually, I think I just cracked it. I have to show you." I pulled up a new window, a simulation of a complex global shipping network. The problem was always the unpredictable variables. A storm in the Atlantic, a dock workers' strike in Singapore. The system could react, but it couldn't anticipate. I typed a command, and the simulation map lit up. Lines of data streamed across the screen. But now, watch! I introduced a random, catastrophic event into the simulation, a sudden port closure. Instantly, Helios didn't just flag the problem. It rerouted hundreds of shipments, rebooked cargo on different vessels, and even calculated the financial impact, all in less than a second. It was thinking. It was alive. Marcus leaned in, his eyes wide with genuine awe. He was silent for a long moment, just watching the AI work its magic. "My God, Alara," he finally whispered. "You did it." He looked from the screen to me, his face glowing with what I thought was shared pride. "You're going to change the world with this," he said, his voice full of conviction. "And I'll be right here to make sure you get all the credit you deserve." His words filled me with a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee. For 5 years, I had poured my heart and soul into these lines of code, and here was the man I respected most in the industry, telling me my dream was real. I believed him. I trusted him completely. I went back to work that night, fueled by his praise and the promise of a future I had built myself, completely unaware that the man who had just vowed to protect my dream was already planning how to steal it. The email arrived the next morning. Mandatory team meeting, 10 a.m. The subject line was bland, corporate, but something about it made my stomach tighten. I walked into the conference room, the one with the big glass walls that looked out over the whole city, and the mood was heavy. Marcus was standing at the head of the table, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of practiced sorrow. "Thanks for coming, everyone," he began, his voice low and somber. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news." He started talking about the market, about a strategic pivot from the board, about the need to realign our resources. It was all a river of corporate jargon, and I didn't understand where it was going until he said the words. "As a result, we're going to be indefinitely shelving all internal skunkworks projects. Effective immediately, the air left my lungs. Skunkworks projects. That was me. That was Helios. I just stared at him, my mind refusing to process the words. Indefinitely shelved? We were on the verge of a breakthrough. He'd seen it himself just last night. He must have seen the look on my face, because his eyes found mine across the table, filled with a look of deep theatrical pity. "Ilara," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "I am so sorry. Your work was brilliant, truly, but it was niche. And right now, the company needs to focus on more profitable, short-term goals. My hands are tied. My hands are tied." The four most cowardly words in the corporate world. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell them all about the simulation, about the potential, but he was already moving on. "For archival purposes," he said, his gaze still on me, "I'll need you to transfer all of your source code. Your research, everything related to Helios, to the central server. We'll keep it safe, of course. For when the timing is right, keep it safe. The words echoed in the silent room. He wasn't just killing my project. He was taking the body. I found my voice, finally. Marcus, this doesn't make any sense, I said, the words feeling clumsy and weak. Helios is ready. It could revolutionize our entire business model. You saw the simulation, Alara. He cut me off, his voice still gentle, but with an edge of finality that was like a door slamming shut in my face. The decision has been made. It's not up for debate. And then came the final insult. But, he said, a hopeful light coming back into his eyes, I've secured a new role for you. A vital one. We need someone with your skills to manage the legacy code for our flagship accounting software. It's a consolation, I know, but it's important work. A consolation. He was offering me a corporate graveyard. 5 years of my life, my heart, my soul. And he was offering me a job maintaining a piece of software so old it was practically a fossil. I just sat there stunned into silence as the meeting wrapped up. He had killed my dream, stolen my code, and then offered me a shovel to go dig its grave. And the worst part? As he walked past me on his way out of the room, he put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, I'm sorry. I really am. I knew then, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that he wasn't sorry at all. And I had a horrible feeling I was about to find out just how deep his betrayal really went. The next few weeks were a special kind of corporate hell. My new desk was in a windowless corner of the building they called the crypt, where old projects went to die. My days were a monotonous blur of debugging code from the 90s and attending meetings about software so outdated it was practically written in ancient hieroglyphs. I was miserable. The passion that had driven me for 5 years was gone, replaced by a dull, aching emptiness. I felt like a ghost haunting the hallways of my own career, and then the email arrived. It was a company-wide blast from the PR department, the kind I usually deleted without reading. The subject line was bright and obnoxious. Get ready to be wowed! Our vision for the future at Innovate Summit. Normally, I would have sent it straight to the trash. But for some reason, maybe boredom, maybe a sick sense of curiosity, I opened it. The email was full of hype about the company's groundbreaking presentation at the biggest tech conference of the year. It talked about redefining the industry and showcasing our bold new direction. At the bottom was a link to the summit's official keynote speaker schedule. I clicked it. The page loaded, a slick futuristic design with photos of tech titans and industry leaders. I scrolled down the list of speakers, and then I saw it. My heart stopped. I mean, it literally stopped for a second. There was his face, Marcus Thorne, smiling that perfect, charismatic smile. And next to his name was the title of his keynote address, Helios, the future of autonomous logistics. The words swam in front of my eyes. Helios, my Helios. I clicked on his speaker bio, my hand shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. The text that appeared was a masterpiece of fiction. Join visionary genius Marcus Thorne as he unveils Helios, a revolutionary AI set to transform the global supply chain. The product of years of his tireless development and singular creative vision, Helios is poised to be the most disruptive technology of the decade. Years of his tireless development. His singular creative vision. I read it again. And again. My name wasn't there. Not in the bio, not in the project description, not anywhere. It was as if I had never existed. He hadn't just shelved my project. He hadn't just stolen it. He had erased me from my own life's work. The grief I had felt in that conference room weeks ago was nothing compared to this. This was a violation. The dull ache in my chest ignited into a white-hot inferno. I looked at his smiling, confident photo on the screen, and I felt a switch flip inside my brain. The part of me that was sad, the part that was hurt, it just burned away. And all that was left was a cold, hard, diamond-sharp fury. The betrayal was no longer just a business decision. It was a declaration of war. He thought he had buried me in the crypt, left me to rot while he took a victory lap with my soul. He had no idea that he hadn't buried me at all. He had just planted a seed. And now I was going to make sure he reaped exactly what he had sown. My first move wasn't some grand, elaborate plan. It was simple. Naive, even. I thought the truth would be enough. I thought the system would work. The next morning, I walked into the HR department with a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. Inside was everything. My original project proposal for Helios from 5 years ago, emails between me and Marcus from the early days where he praised my vision, code repositories with timestamps proving I was the primary author. I had a mountain of evidence. I felt nervous but confident. How could they possibly ignore this? The HR manager, a woman with a practiced plastic smile, listened to my story with polite detachment. She took my folder, glanced at the first page, and then set it down on her desk. "Well, Ilara," she said, her voice smooth and condescending, "while I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." She launched into a speech that felt like it was written by the company's lawyers. "You see," she explained as if I were a child, "all work product created by an employee is the intellectual property of the company. As the head of the department, Marcus has every right to reassign projects as he sees fit." I just stared at her. "Reassign?" I stammered. "He didn't reassign it. He killed it. And then he stole it." Her smile didn't waver. "Those are very strong words, Ilara. I'd be careful using them." She pushed the folder back across the desk toward me. "There's nothing HR can do." I couldn't believe it. I walked out of her office in a daze. The system hadn't just failed. It was designed to protect people like him and crush people like me. But I wasn't done yet. I emailed a senior VP I'd worked with before, someone I thought was a decent man. I laid out the whole story, attaching my proof. His response came an hour later. It was one sentence. "Ilara, my advice is to not cause waves. Be a team player. A team player." I was a team player when I was working 80-hour weeks, pouring my soul into a project that was supposed to be the future of the company. Now I was just a wave. The final blow came at lunch. I found my closest work friend Sarah in the cafeteria. I told her everything, my voice a desperate whisper. She listened, her eyes darting around nervously. When I was done, she wouldn't meet my gaze. "Ilara," she said, her voice barely audible, "you have to drop this. Marcus, he's powerful. You can't win. He'll destroy you." She got up and walked away, leaving me alone at the table, my half-eaten sandwich feeling like a rock in my stomach. That was it. HR had shut me down. Management had told me to be quiet. My own friend was too scared to stand with me. I was completely, utterly alone. The rage I felt earlier was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying feeling of powerlessness. They had all the power and I had nothing. I walked back to my desk in the crypt, the silence of the room a perfect match for the silence I was getting from everyone else. I sat there staring at my screen, feeling the weight of my defeat. He had won. He had stolen my life's work, and he was going to get away with it. There was nothing I could do. It was in that moment of complete despair, sitting in that corporate graveyard, that a memory flickered in the back of my mind, a line of code I'd written years ago, a secret door I'd built for myself, a ghost that no one knew existed. That night, I sat on my couch in the dark, the city lights a distant, mocking glitter through my window. I felt hollowed out, defeated. I had poured my entire soul into Helios, and for what? To be erased. To be told to be a team player while my life's work was paraded around as someone else's masterpiece. I opened my personal laptop, not even sure why. Maybe I just wanted to look at it one last time. I started scrolling through the old development files, the ones I had saved on my own drive. Early mock-ups, failed simulations, thousands of lines of code that were like a diary of the last 5 years. And then I saw it. It was a file I hadn't opened in years, buried deep in a folder labeled Diagnostics. The file name was simple: Admin Override Sys. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on it. The code that filled the screen was mine, a familiar, elegant script that I had written in a caffeine-fueled haze 3 years ago. It was a backdoor, a ghost, a developer's failsafe that I had built into the core architecture of Helios. It was meant to be a secret key, a way for me to perform emergency updates or fix catastrophic bugs without having to go through the main servers. A tool for the architect to fix her creation. Marcus had never known about it. The company's IT department had never known about it. Only I knew it existed. When Marcus had ordered me to transfer the source code, he thought he was getting everything. He thought he had the keys to the kingdom. But he didn't have this key. This was mine. I stared at the lines of code, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. The despair, the powerlessness that had been crushing me for days. It started to recede. It was replaced by something else. Something sharp and dangerous and full of purpose. This wasn't just a diagnostic tool anymore. This wasn't just a backdoor. It was a weapon. My mind started racing, the gears turning faster than they had in weeks. He was going to stand on that stage, in front of the entire tech world, and present my AI. He was going to use the live active version of Helios, connected to the summit's network. And I could still get in. I could still access it. I could still control it. The plan started to form in my mind, not as a vague fantasy of revenge, but as a clear, precise, and beautiful piece of code. I wouldn't just expose him. I wouldn't just prove he was a thief. I would take back what was mine. I would reclaim my creation at the exact moment of his greatest triumph in front of the entire world. He wanted to be a visionary genius? Fine. I was about to give him a legacy he would never forget. The ghost in the code was awake now. And it was time to start building my Trojan horse. I became a creature of the night. My days were spent in the corporate crypt, a ghost in the machine, doing my mindless work and keeping my head down. But my nights? My nights were for building the guillotine. I couldn't work from home. Corporate IT had eyes everywhere. So I found a new office, a sticky booth at the back of a 24-hour diner that smelled of burnt coffee and cleaning solution. I'd sit there from midnight until 4 in the morning, nursing a single cup of black coffee, my laptop hidden from the view of the handful of truckers and night owls who shared the space. My connection was a tangled web of private VPNs, routing my signal through servers in 3 different countries. To anyone watching, I was a ghost, and I coded. My fingers flew across the keyboard, fueled by a rage so cold and pure it was like fuel. I was building my Trojan horse, a beautiful, elegant piece of malware hidden in plain sight. Marcus would be using a standard presentation file for the summit, a file that would have to connect to the live Helios server for his grand finale. And that file was my way in. I designed the script to be invisible, inert, a sleeping dragon tucked away inside the presentation's code. It would do nothing. It would trigger no alarms. It would be a perfectly normal file. Until the final click. The click he would make to advance to his last triumphant slide. That was my trigger. The moment he clicked, my script would execute a cascade of commands in milliseconds. First, it would hijack the presentation. The final slide he had so carefully prepared would never appear. Instead, it would be replaced by my original Helios draft files, the ones from 5 years ago, still watermarked with my name and the original project date. Second, a new message would overlay the entire screen, simple, brutal, and undeniable. Unauthorized use detected, system override initiated. And third, the most beautiful part, it would execute a final irreversible command. It would access the core admin privileges of Helios, identify Marcus Thorne's user credentials, and permanently, irrevocably delete them. He wouldn't just be exposed. He would be locked out of his own stolen kingdom forever. The work was meticulous, dangerous. Every line of code had to be perfect. One mistake, one sloppy command, and the whole thing could fail. One night, my heart nearly stopped. I was testing the connection to the company server through my back door when a security alert flashed on a hidden monitor. Unusual remote login detected. Corporate IT was awake. My hands flew across the keyboard, severing the connection, wiping my digital tracks, and shutting down my laptop in under 3 seconds. I sat there in the sticky diner booth, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced that a black van was about to pull up outside. But nothing happened. It was a false alarm. Or maybe a lucky escape. I packed up my gear, my hands still shaking, and walked out into the pre-dawn chill. The close call didn't deter me. It sharpened my focus. The summit was in 2 weeks. My Trojan horse was almost complete. And as I worked, Marcus was busy making my job even easier, digging his own grave with the arrogance of a king who believed his throne was divine. While I was hiding in the shadows, Marcus was stepping into the spotlight. And he wore it like a king. The week before the summit, his face was everywhere. I couldn't escape it. There he was in Tech Forward magazine. A glossy, full-page photo of him standing in front of a server rack, arms crossed, looking thoughtful and visionary. The headline read, "The Man Who Reinvented Tomorrow." I bought a copy and read the interview, my stomach churning with every word. He talked about his creative process. He described the lonely late nights and the moment of pure inspiration when the core concept for Helios came to him. He was telling my story, but he had cast himself as the hero. His arrogance was becoming a physical presence in the office. The bonus he'd been promised must have cleared, because a brand new screaming red sports car appeared in his reserved parking spot. He'd walk through the office, keys dangling from his finger, talking loudly on his phone about closing deals and stock options. He was performing his success for everyone, and they were all eating it up. People who used to be my colleagues would stop by his office to congratulate him, to bask in his glow. No one seemed to remember the quiet coder in the corner who had actually built the thing they were celebrating. I just kept my head down, debugging my ancient code in the crypt, letting his arrogance build. Every boast, every lie, was just more fuel for the fire I was building. He was making himself the perfect villain, and then he made his final, fatal mistake. The email landed in my inbox on a Friday afternoon, the day before the summit. The subject line was just his name, Marcus Thorne. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened it. It was a link to his magazine interview, and below it, a short condescending note. No hard feelings, Alara. This is just how the big leagues work. Maybe you'll learn from this. I read the message 3 times. The sheer, unadulterated hubris of it. The casual cruelty. He wasn't just a thief. He was a sadist. He wanted me to see him winning. He wanted me to know I was crushed. He was spiking the football in the end zone, and he wanted to make sure I had a front row seat. I didn't reply. I didn't get angry. I just took a slow, deep breath. A strange sense of calm washed over me. The fury that had been driving me for weeks settled into something cold and hard and clear. This was no longer just about reclaiming my work. It was about delivering a lesson. His lesson. I saved the email. I printed it out. I added it to the digital folder I had labeled simply Payback. He thought he was teaching me how the big leagues work. He had no idea that class was about to be in session, and the final exam was less than 24 hours away. The day of the summit arrived. I woke up that morning feeling eerily calm. The fury had settled into a quiet, cold hum in the pit of my stomach. Today was not about emotion. It was about execution. The convention center was a gleaming cathedral of glass and steel, buzzing with the energy of thousands of people who had come to witness the future. I walked through the main doors, a fake press pass hanging around my neck, a favor from a freelance journalist friend who owed me one. I was invisible, just another face in the crowd. The main auditorium was enormous, a cavernous space filled with row after row of seats, all pointed toward a massive stage where the execution was set to take place. I found a spot in the very back, in the shadows, a perfect vantage point. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen a familiar comfort. I connected to the public network, routed my signal through my web of VPNs, and ran a final diagnostic. The Trojan horse was in place. The kill switch was armed. Everything was ready. I looked towards the stage and saw him. Marcus. He was backstage, visible through a gap in the curtains, schmoozing with a circle of investors and tech billionaires. He was in his element, laughing, shaking hands, radiating a confidence that made my blood boil. They were treating him like a rock star, a prophet, the next Steve Jobs. And he was soaking it all in, basking in the glory of a creation he hadn't built. I just watched him, my face a blank mask. Let him have his moment, I thought. Let him climb as high as he possibly can. It will only make the fall that much more spectacular. The house lights began to dim. A hush fell over the massive crowd. My heart started a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. It was time. A deep, booming voice filled the auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the future of logistics. The giant screens on stage exploded to life. A slick, high-budget hype video began to play. Epic music swelled as rockets launched and cargo ships cut through digital oceans. And then there was his voice, a confident, inspiring narration over the cinematic footage. It was a masterpiece of corporate propaganda. The video ended with a final dramatic shot of the globe, with the name Helios blazing across it. The announcer's voice returned, booming with excitement. Please welcome the visionary, the innovator, the man behind Helios, Marcus Thorne. The crowd erupted in applause. The stage lights flared, and he walked out from behind the curtain, waving, smiling, bathed in the spotlight he had stolen. He walked to the center of the stage, a god among men. I took a slow, deep breath, my fingers resting on my keyboard. The performance was about to begin. He was magnificent. I hated him for it, but he was magnificent. Marcus owned that stage. He didn't just give a presentation. He put on a show. He was a master, moving with an easy confidence, his voice a perfect blend of passion and authority. He took my complex algorithms, my years of dense research, and he spun them into a story. A simple, exciting, and digestible narrative about the future. His future. With every click of his remote, another piece of my soul appeared on the giant screens behind him. My user interface designs, my data visualizations, my architectural flowcharts. They were all there, stripped of my name, presented as trophies of his brilliance. He was taking a victory lap through 5 years of my life, and the audience was giving him a standing ovation in their minds. I could see the investors in the front rows. They were captivated, leaning forward in their seats, nodding, their faces illuminated by the glow of their tablets as they took furious notes. I could practically hear their thoughts, the billion-dollar valuations, the IPOs, the magazine covers. They were watching a king be crowned, and they were ready to finance his kingdom. I just sat there in the darkness of the back row, a ghost at my own coronation. My laptop was open, my fingers resting on the keys, my screen a black mirror reflecting the spectacle on stage. I let him have it all. I let him climb to the very peak of his fraudulent mountain. The higher he climbed, the harder he would fall. He was nearing the end now. The presentation was building to a crescendo. He clicked to the second-to-last slide, a summary of Helios's revolutionary potential, my words, my vision. He let the slide hang there for a moment, a confident smile playing on his lips as he surveyed the adoring crowd. Helios is not just a product, he said, his voice ringing with a powerful, practiced sincerity. It is a new beginning. He let the words land, letting the investors savor the taste of their future profits. Then he raised his remote, his thumb hovering over the button. He looked out at the audience, a triumphant glint in his eye. And now, he said, his voice dropping to a dramatic, suspenseful hush, for the grand finale. My finger found the enter key. The trap was set. All he had to do was click. He clicked, for one. Long, agonizing second, nothing happened. The slide he was on just stayed there, frozen on the screen. I saw a flicker of confusion cross his face. He glanced down at his remote, a tiny, almost imperceptible frown. He clicked again, and then it began. The screens didn't just change, they bled. Every monitor in that vast auditorium, the giant one behind him, the smaller repeaters lining the walls, flashed a violent, angry red. A klaxon sound, low and menacing, began to pulse through the speakers, drowning out the epic music. And then, the words appeared. Huge, white block letters that no one could miss. Unauthorized use detected. System override initiated. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. People were looking at each other, wondering if this was part of the show. Marcus just stood there, his perfect smile frozen on his face, his mind clearly unable to process what was happening. And then, my work appeared. Not his slick, rebranded version. My version. The screens were flooded with my original draft files, the ones I had created 5 years ago. The file name was visible at the top of each one, Helios V1 Draft. The metadata was there for everyone to see. Creation dates, modification logs, every digital fingerprint proving my ownership. And watermarked across every single slide in a faint but unmistakable gray was my name. Ilara Vance. The murmuring in the crowd grew louder, turning from confusion to suspicion. People were pointing at the screen, at my name. Marcus's face had gone from confused to a pale, sweaty mask of pure terror. He started fumbling with his remote, clicking it uselessly, but he had lost control. I had control, and then I delivered the final killing blow. The presentation vanished, replaced by one final simple message, displayed on that blood-red background. Project Helios. Lead architect, Ilara Vance. All access credentials for Marcus Thorne have been permanently revoked. Goodbye. He stood there, frozen in the spotlight, a statue of his own failure. The microphone, still live, picked up the sound of his ragged, panicked breathing, broadcasting his terror to the entire room. The stunned silence of the audience lasted for maybe 5 seconds, and then it broke. It wasn't applause. It was a roar. The sound of thousands of people whispering, pulling out their phones. The frantic clicking of keyboards as tech journalists realized they were witnessing the public execution of a career. I sat in the back, in the darkness, and watched the king fall from his stolen throne. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy. I just felt a quiet, profound, and deeply satisfying calm. The code had run. Justice was served, and as the chaos on stage began, I realized my work here wasn't quite done. The chaos on stage was a blur. 2 summit organizers, their faces a mixture of panic and fury, were rushing toward Marcus. He was still frozen, a statue in the spotlight, until one of them grabbed his arm. He stumbled, finally breaking from his trance, and they practically dragged him off stage, an awkward, humiliating exit that the cameras captured from every angle. The roar in the auditorium was deafening now, the sound of a scandal being born. I didn't watch him go. My part in his story was over. I calmly began to pack my laptop, the quiet clicks of the latches on my bag a stark contrast to the mayhem unfolding in the room. I was just another anonymous attendee in the back row, slipping away before anyone could connect me to the carnage. But as I turned to leave, a figure appeared in the aisle, blocking my path. It was a woman from the front row, one of the investors I had seen hanging on Marcus's every word. She was older, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an aura of power that was unmistakable. "Ilara Vance?" she asked, her voice calm and direct, cutting through the noise of the room. My heart skipped a beat. Yes, she didn't smile. She just looked at me with a calculating, appraising gaze. That was the most brutal and elegant takedown I've ever witnessed, she said, a hint of admiration in her tone. And if you can build a system like Helios and then defend it like that, we need to talk. I looked from her to the chaotic stage, then back to her calm, steady eyes. She wasn't offering sympathy. She was offering an opportunity. A future. I slowly, deliberately closed my laptop. Okay, I said, my voice as calm as hers. Let's talk. I followed her out a side exit, leaving the noise and the wreckage of Marcus's career behind us. As we walked down the quiet, carpeted hallway, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Marcus. A single, pathetic, pleading message. How could you? I looked at the words on the screen. The last desperate gasp of a man who still didn't understand. He thought I had destroyed him. He didn't realize I had just built myself. I didn't reply. I just slipped the phone back into my pocket without breaking my stride and walked on, ready to finally start building my own world. 6 months later, the world looked different. The fallout from the Innovate Summit was legendary. Marcus Thorne became a cautionary tale, a meme, the poster child for corporate hubris. He was fired, of course, and last I heard, he was drowning in lawsuits from the company and its investors for fraud. He was radioactive, a pariah in the industry he once thought he ruled. I got a lot of job offers after that night. Big, impressive offers from tech giants who wanted to own the Helios brand, and the story that came with it. I turned them all down. I wasn't interested in being a trophy, a symbol of someone else's victory. I was done working in other people's kingdoms. The venture capitalist I met that night, her name is Anya, she didn't offer me a job. She offered me a blank check. Go build your own world, she'd said, and send me the bill, so I did. My new office isn't in some corporate crypt. It's a bright, open space with floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the city. The sign on the door doesn't say Skunkworks, it says Helios Innovations. My team is small, brilliant, and loyal. And Sarah, my old work friend, the one who was too scared to stand with me back then, she was the first person I hired. She walked into my office on her first day, looked me in the eye, and said, "I'm sorry I was a coward. I won't be one again." I just smiled and told her to get to work. Sometimes, when I'm working late, I'll look up at the wall of my office. I had one thing framed, a screenshot from that night at the summit. It's the final message from my Trojan horse, the one that ended Marcus's career and started mine, lead architect, Alara Vance. All access credentials for Marcus Thorne have been permanently revoked. Goodbye. I look at it, and I don't feel anger or even triumph anymore. I just feel a sense of peace. He took my work, my past, and tried to erase me. So I took his future. Was I right to do it so brutally, so publicly? Or is there a point where justice and revenge become the same thing? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you've ever had to fight for what's yours, hit that like button and subscribe to Reddit Unpacked for more stories that make you question everything.